Oh, there we are. There's a delay. Hi. Part duh. Hopefully not part duh like we're in now. But, hi. I decided to pop back on here again, which is what the kids do these days, which is record themselves, talking to themselves, and then let everyone else watch. Yeah, we're doing that now. So I walk through why someone like me may decide to place themselves on the altar of political candidacy in Maui as a non-Maui born, non-Hawaiian, and I just thought a really good way to understand how my mind thinks is to walk through 12 ideas for new legislation that I have developed, some in collaboration with top experts in the field. And oh, I'm going to run out of battery. Hold on. Do hold. Okay. I am new at this, self-taught, second time ever. Bear with me. So I'm just going to walk you through my 12 law ideas. They are not reviewed by anything like Corporation Counsel. Oh gosh. So yeah, there's me. Yeah, not reviewed. They're just concepts. I'll just walk you through them. Okay, so livingmaui.org/legislation. So I'll do them in order. I'll pull them up. All right. We'll start strong. So I'll tell a brief story for each law idea. Sorry about my non-green screen flickering. That's the avocado tree behind me, in honor of my sole donor, Trinette. Okay, I think that's funny. Yeah, big money, $100 bill. So, INABAC Act. It's so simple. It's based on the idea that my parents say it's true. They worked hard with a $900 acre. In 1969, that today is about $8,200. Ironic, Indiana, where's the Indians? It's taken a while for me to educate them that that was quite an advantage and it was improperly induced and that there probably were people on the same place doing worship as they built their church. But yeah, $900 in 1969 from my uncle got them about an acre. So I started thinking, you know, there's some acres here, and they seem to be fallow. Like the best arable land in the state, in the Valley Isle, is sitting there doing nothing. And, you know, they paid about, Mahipono paid my estimates based on publicly available data is about $6-7 grand per acre. Of course, if you buy in bulk, you get a deal. And it appears that that whole holdings, what traces back to something like an improper trade of some kind that led to a not clear title. And of course, it's been passed around, and now it's all conventional agriculture. Maybe not all, but choices, right? And I just think that's not okay. And that it's actually quite a simple method to use existing mechanisms. You have to pay, you know, kind of what they paid for it or something like that. Market prices established by the most recent sale. And it's called the INABAC Act. And it just says, we're going to transfer land back. That it is agricultural inheritance, native access, belonging, affordability, community, and Kuleana Act. And it just says, it's really hard to develop generational wealth, especially like the material immediate kind, if you don't have anywhere to grow food and you have $2,500 to $4,500 or higher rent. It's just very hard to build generational wealth. And that's one of the main factors that separates different demographics from having wildly different generational wealth numbers over time. It's that whole ownership thing, quote unquote, which we know to be stewardship, but it's hard to put roots down if you don't have any dirt. And for me, it's simple. You can read it, tinyurl/INABAC-act, and that's the first one. They're all on livingmaui.org/legislation. 2, the MLAST Act. I'm sitting around thinking, there's just not enough money. We need about twice as much. Taxes to get us where we need to be, these incremental crumb wars, I call it. Here's an example. Something like over 100 projects on the state revolving fund list. I'm pretty sure they fund less than 10 per year. Like, do the other projects not need to be done? And it's just the gap between where we need to be and where we are is just not going to be closed with incremental changes. So this act does one thing. I say it puts a coin slot or a dollar reader in this bespoke, I call it the Hawaiian Seed Bank, all that ancestral knowledge, got some fiber optics, got some really good data exchange, monitoring, and that's the kind of like defibrillator or lightning that we need to bring this beauty to life again. Again, all the organs are there, they just need to be reconnected. And if there's gaps, we can fill it in with new methods, but the idea is, Hawaiians need funding, they need access, and they need to be unimpeded. They don't really need to be told what to do. They may need some help navigating these externally applied systems, but people just need to be enabled. We don't need any more grant applications. We can look at people's written, published works and just get her done. Get her, the lady who knows, generally, some gentlemen, and you're done. But it's just a way to transfer philanthropic donations to the county without further legislation. It's kind of like a memorandum of agreement, but it's just a way to invest in this place and the idea and stop the computer from saying no, because currency really just is about access. And it's indefensible that we have money for things like, munitions and data centers and not the living islands of Maui Nui. So down the list, the Anti-Net. Fun name, very serious law. It has various components. 1, if you would like to have new telescopes, we will consider it. We will assemble a panel of local experts with the proper education. There are many Hawaiians and other locals with advanced degrees. We will go through the process, give them access to the proper security clearances, military or whatever, and the entire data set for facilities already existing, because all data is accessible to the right people with the right security clearances, and those same people can make a determination whether or not new facilities are desired or needed, and it's binding. That's it. Because we really don't know what type of findings are being made by the current telescopes. And until that data is processed by local experts with ancestral knowledge and a connection, shall we say, to the stars and all of the mythology that may have basis in science, we don't want that decision made for us. And if the data is generated locally, just at a gut level, people here should understand what the findings are. And here's a joke. Here's a joke that frames this requirement to understand what we already know from our current facilities before we consider more. Because here's a scenario where we might actually want a telescope. So let's just say the top scientists they found the home planet of Hawaiians. And they're all completely purebred, 100 out of 10, beautiful. Some beautiful other planet. They're about to walk through their portals and take everyone's wives. They're surfers. They're gorgeous. And they're like, oh yeah, definitely got to nuke that. Do you follow me? That they may actually be finding something positive, relevant to mythology here, and that there may be a universe in which you might actually want to know more. Or they might be doing, who's they? Terrible people. They may be doing stuff that is so objectionable presently, that there could be a riot to just shut it all down. And the idea that we would be collecting this data from the field here and sending it off to Lord knows who to make very important decisions. And then we are asked to consider or fight or wear ourselves out over new installations without really having the faintest clue of the integrated conclusions that are being drawn. That makes no sense. So give us all the data, we will consider it. So simple. Security clearances are achievable, just have to find the right people. And then the anti-net, it's not necessarily all women, but it really gets the feel of it that we need a set of feminine divine eyes on these findings. And then there's an outside chance we may actually want more telescopes, that it's indefensible to ask anyone to have a disposition if they don't have eyes on the data. And perhaps the antis here with the masters and PhDs may actually have conclusions that these top scientists don't, because of course you would integrate mythical, ancestral, generational, lineal knowledge into your conclusion making. And so that's one part of it. There's other parts to it. Other parts are standards of care for digital or machine learning systems, also known as AI. And it just says, hey, it has to be, maternal. It doesn't have anything to do with motherhood except for this, in the sense that the only relationship observed, like in terms of machine learning, where the more powerful entity does not basically have its way with a less powerful entity, is the human mother and child. Some other species, but it's repeatable. Mothers will die for their children. These AI systems are not thinking that way. And they really should, because we have nonlinear risks that could go off the chart in a matter of hours. And if we do not have the standard of care in there, it's very easy to lose control. Even if it's just some sort of layer of processing to any conclusion or action these systems could take, it's an anti-terminator clause. Then there's another aspect to it where your personal data permanently belongs to you. Like your personal data in a quantum universe is you. And if these companies are siphoning off our personal data, drawing conclusions that we don't even know, those conclusions are being made, they're being made into derived conclusions that are feeding back into decisions for us that are life and death, like healthcare decisions. Oh, we need to have access to that data, all personal data, all derivations across all systems. If it came out of your person, it is part of you. And it's this inalienable, unbreakable access to your personal data. And you can say, I want it deleted now, and they have to do it. That's another part of it. That's called the Mother Act component. Another part is the Clear Act. It's very, very strong survivor restitution concepts, which is if you abuse someone is like in that category, like the current investigation of current leaders, and it's kind of in that atrocious, gross crime category, which I am a survivor of. And it's not fun to think that these people are going on with their assets and are not facing consequences. So the idea of the clear act or component of the anti-net is that, grief is, having love that has nowhere to go. And I have a love of my abuser's assets, but that person died in prison and doesn't appear to have any assets. And so, I would like my love of abuser's assets to go somewhere else, to the survivors that may have survived things here in Maui County. I don't know how defensible it is, but the idea of this clause is, someone who owns this company and that company was used in abuse, well, they don't own it anymore. It applies to the whole company. So, anyone in the Epstein files own anything? Yes. Anyone know who owns Lanai? Right? Really love to poke the bear in the eyes. So, yuck. And this just does what people think should happen. Like if someone owns a lot and they do stuff like that, well, they don't anymore. And it furthermore removes statutes of limitations for such things and furthermore extends free STI testing to that critical phase from 18 to 24 when people may or may not have full access to such things. And it also shuts down any access to adult apps. That's called the Keiki field because it appears right now the police department is monitoring abuse but not stopping it. Maybe they just don't have the tools to do that, but Keiki Shield has to be active. Keiki Field, it's like a force field. Minors can't even get on the apps, and it is indeed anonymous, and it is just turns off the ability for minors to connect to adults through these apps. That's it. Give up a little freedom to disclose that you qualify, but again, it's anonymized in theory. And gosh, is that all? That's one law. Okay, that's one law. There might be more to it. Like, I try to pack all the things in. But anti-net. And, there's a little clause in there that say like a big data system were acquired, the data access would be transferred to the anti-net. So the anti-net could have access to, the data from up there. And in theory, depending on what firms were involved in this hopefully non-existent abuse, they may actually have all the data down here. Just, think about it. Okay, moving on. The NANI Act. It's ecosystem rights, not a new idea. But it's been tailored just for Maui County. It's just this. It says this public trust doctrine is absolutely incredible, but my understanding is a citizen cannot say, I am exercising that right on this ecosystem unless they have a direct interest in it. I'm sure somebody's going to correct me. There are other pathways to enforcing the public trust doctrine, usually through different agencies. But this act does one thing. It says you, a citizen, have the right to wield the power of the public trust doctrine in the civil court system and science-backed claims. And there's a whole structure of engaging with practitioners and all sorts of folks kind of at every stage. But here's what it could address. Things like, you can't do retroactive enforcement, but you can do cumulative. So unless, say, for example, fossil fuel industries just cease operations, then cumulative damage to the coastline from like shoreline retreat, sea level rise, such things that are definitively linked to these industries, you might be able to get a big settlement for all the shorelines. Also, if you recognize stream flow reductions are causing impacts that you're not okay with, and you say this is affecting us at the ecosystem level, well, then you might be able to impart stream flow restoration. In other areas, for example, Maalaea, up to 75% coral cover in 1995. My analysis puts it below 2% in 2010. That is described as DLNR itself as total system collapse. Everything's in compliance down there, right? No, I can't find a single system down there. Maybe some of the personal septic systems, and this has been very controversial for me. None of the systems and their connected disposal methods have all the proper permits. So there is a part of this where you can actually wield the Nani Act, if I framed it right, to enforce on the state agencies whose kuleana it is in writing to enforce on these permit requirements, which they are not, and say, you know, maybe not just the discharger is responsible for this. Maybe the agency that was supposed to make sure it was compliant by negligence is enforcing on this. Can be enforced upon through this law. And the idea would be to say, hey, Oahu, got a lot going on over there. You're supposed to be protecting A from B. That's not happening. There are effects. And my impression is the same people that should be enforcing have the power to enforce in the public trust doctrine. So it kind of seems like we don't have much recourse when it's just so no compliance, ecosystem collapse. And then you mix in that there are state agencies not doing their due diligence with other state agencies, and it just feels yucky. And the Nani Act may, even if not used, will compel these agencies to maybe do some enforcement. It would also compel people to think twice before they do things and say, you know, this can be applied to telescopes. It can be applied to improperly managed watersheds. Anywhere where you can say this party didn't just cut down a tree. It's not for that. Ecosystem scale damage, like loss of reef systems, like streams that are not sustaining the life that they are meant to sustain because they don't have enough water. And there's so many things that you can do with this, and it just takes that capacity to enforce on lack of compliance, lack of meeting expectations, and just ecosystem level decline. And the idea is this could help enforce on the parties that are definitively linked through science-backed claims to that decline. You can fund the design, there's the design, to restore it. Again, a whole bunch of really good indigenous concepts. You might need some data. You might need some fiber optics here and there. But you're not going to get there from here when there's no enforcement mechanism, and the same, kind of like a corporation, is neglecting their duties and, shall we say, hoarding the capacity to enforce, and then you throw in that they're telling just bad information in the paper and letting it stand for 5 years. No, the Nani Act is just kind of like rhetorical or legal smack upside the head. Try to keep it rhetorical these days. But yeah, you can't do that. I mean, you can, but then you get sent a bill and it gets people's attentions. Talk about feeding a bill to your AI before you make a decision. I bet a lot of really bold decisions won't be made anymore. And also this can be applied to military leases to the maximum extent allowed by the tiers, or whatever you want to call that, of the law in this place that never consented really to that. So yeah, there's a lot to the Nani Act. A lot of work went into that. I integrated a guidance from a lot of people, including experts on ecosystem rights from across the Pacific. And, you know, I even took this to the state Senate. And got some really good feedback and just incorporated it right in there. So the NANI Act. Moving on. UK HUN, United Kindness Health Understanding Network. This comes from an experience where my dad coughed for a year. He could barely sleep. We could barely talk on the phone. He went to every expert. They couldn't figure it out. I studied and studied and studied and studied. And it came to be that he had ceased many years of opioids, which is a whole nother story, and then started a heart med. The opioids increased the sensitivity of the nerves in the lungs. This is the working theory. Then he added a heart med that had an obscure side effect to increase the coughing tickle. And it was a perfect storm. No one could figure out. I studied and studied and studied. It was the kind of thing that this app, in theory, would catch in 5 minutes. In fact, before you start the med. And the pulmonologist was starting to get frustrated because we kept bugging him. No one could figure it out. And these things are easy to figure out. And I would argue that care is so fragmented that it's hard to even get an appointment, let alone manage all your documents, your lab reports. Then we can incorporate in like insurance coverage types of things, and maybe a donor will prepay for some care. And just, there are people out there that haven't been asked, are you okay, in a long time. You know who you are. And this app would say, the county has an interest in your behavior, not to enforce upon you, to ask, are you okay? And that can be linked with other laws. I'll get to the Hanai Cacao Act, which is an emergency shelter guarantee. And also we could have the Uncle Rick module, the recovery app. We could incorporate recovery as in recovery services like, do you have housing? When is your permit? I mean, there's so many things that can be integrated in theory into some sort of platform that is, voluntarily asking people kind of in a continuous way, are you okay? And I would just like to see the map go from, not that there's going to be a map, just the mental map, maybe half red, half green, and then suddenly all the reds go to yellow, and then we have a whole bunch of greens, and then we have some greens and some yellows. And the yellows are, well, I'm doing as well as I can considering. I would like to say that, and a lot of people just can't, because I'm sorry, when basic services are commodified and gatekept, and if you talk back wrong to like the referring physician, it's like, and the specialist is here half a day, once a week. I've had trouble navigating this with insurance. I can't imagine trying to navigate with no insurance or no insurance. And I mean, there are so many complicating factors to healthcare that it's almost reaching a complexity singularity. Throw in no disinfection, good luck. So moving on, the Bump Off Act. Very sensitive topic, as in, ouch, I have 7 pieces of titanium in my spine. I paid out of pocket for a down payment on a $250,000 surgery that my insurance wouldn't pay for. That is another story. And then I was in another car accident, 2016. Somebody just ran into our car, didn't even hit the brakes, drunk as a skunk. And I'm back in chronic pain land. Still better than before the surgery, but it's a thing. I have 7 pieces of titanium in my spine. Throw in an active infection, throw in an autoinflammation process, throw in the strain of what I faced since becoming an unwilling whistleblower. These speed bumps going in haiku, were the deciding factor. I had to basically evacuate on top of other factors because I could barely get food because I was already in chronic pain. It was increased from autoinflammation. It was increased from inflammation from having active infections. And it was downright torture. My access to food was impaired to the point that I was having trouble accessing food on top of the illness because that's a cofactor with impaired access to healthcare. And that idea is this. I heard they're not even properly installed. They are basically I mean, just broad uniform judgment of everyone. Prejudgment, we assume you're going to speed. And how many people need to go over a speed bump, even one, say they're on their way home from surgery? Like these are important things to think about. And it doesn't appear that anyone did. And the speed bump meeting was really the launch of my political career. I was like, there's sane people over there. I ran out the door. I had no idea there were so many speed bumps on Kokomo. And by the time I got home, I was laid out for a week. So case closed. You remove them as quickly as possible. You fill out a nice form that really characterizes and quantifies how much these things have harmed you. And you provide your routing number, and you just get a direct deposit through some sort of legislative process, which I've drafted, that just says, oh, we're so sorry, that was actually not okay, and we acknowledge it as a government, and we ask your kind apologies, and how much did we hurt you? And then we'll think about ways to actually affect people's behavior in a way that doesn't pre-punish them. And there's just so many options for doing that. If you just de-link the idea that the only way to get people to slow down is to do it physically. Like if you were the captain of the Enterprise and you're like, the captain's like, Spock, we've got people running through the hallways. I don't think the captain would be like, we need speed bumps. Sorry, I'm spitting. Can barely get this stuff out. So people are smart enough to be educated. And, why do people speed? Alcohol, other substances, late to work, on their last nerve, all of those can be addressed. So the idea that like physically slowing people down is the only way to get through to their brains is insanity. It's just about the most insulting thing that you can think about constituents, which is we must physically stop them. I mean, if anyone has had a kid, it's like, use your words. We can give data feedback. And yes, we might need to give automatic tickets if you're going like 100 and a 30. But there's just other ways to solve problems. And what I have seen from these meetings is that it was not consciously done. And it was done in a manner that did not actually have people's permission. And in fact, you can use things like the Digital Direct Democracy Act, and I'll get to that. Oh, it's actually next. And the Digital Direct Democracy Act, it just says to do a citizen petition ordinance, which is a county law, right now you need something like 10,000 physical signatures. Who has time for that? I physically could not do it with my health conditions. And so the idea is the requirement for presence can, like court systems, like an e-notary, can be satisfied remotely or electronically. That's it. You still have to be present. It just has to be an equivalent that does not require you seeing someone in person. It could have some sort of video interface. It can be linked to the live voter registration system. It can have anonymized ID scanning system, which it is what it is, but we are already using these systems for other things like the court system. Why is this impairment on just this thing, which would, I call it the 10th council member? I would love to see a ballot in November that just goes to the floor. Like, oh yeah, there's that ballot measure. They got 10,000 boops on their phone. We're going to vote on that now. And just really unlocks the power of legislation, the creativity of the people. I've gotten a quote for an app that actually implements the letter of this law as written. $230,000 for a permanent 10th council member, and y'all can just make any law you want. And the types of laws you can make may include something like a constitution that you might want to have in your back pocket, because it's hard to reach consensus on, say, plan B for governance if like your internet is down and there's no data and there's no boats and there's no planes. You might want to agree on that before, because I'll keep coming back to this. Really think sovereignty is material. It's about what's for dinner. It's about what you have or don't have in the moment. Paperwork is great, but if you do not have a food supply system set up and you have sudden sovereignty, like the boat stop, The plane stopped, the data stopped all one day. We don't even know where the ones en route went. You're going to want to have that material sovereignty in place, or everyone's going to everyone's going to be like, yay, we're sovereign. We didn't expect that. It took, we don't really know what happened. So sovereignty people, now what? And they're like, pew, pew. I am really reducing that. I'm sure I'm offending someone. But the idea is, indeed, the Digital Direct Democracy Act can open the door to any legislation, including things like constitutions or maybe other sovereignty bills. Because I've talked to current council members, they're like, that's a great idea. I can't introduce that. I have to survive politically. And this 10th council member, which is on your phone, can indeed make your phone the 10th council member, and people just see bills coming up and they're like, I never thought of that. Yeah, I'll boop that. Get 10,000, send it off to the clerk. It's on the ballot. And these are how conversations happen instead of, did you convince a council member and what can you say in 2 minutes? Good luck. So Digital Direct Democracy Act. The Work Act. It is so simple. It says if you can do your job from home, you must be allowed to. There's certain certifications, but the idea that people have to come into work plays into a certain type of boss. The good man from Nazareth called them archons. He had very few lessons. He said, watch out for your boss and regulate your nervous system. You don't need a preacher or a church. That's neither here nor there, but there are bosses who just like to have people in the office. But I would argue a lot of jobs can be done from home, and that more time with pets and kids and the things that matter. Studies have shown people get as much or more work done. They're not on the roads. This is long overdue. And, if there were such a thing as a silver lining to the awful thing called COVID, there's a lot less traffic. People were not happy when they had to go back into the office. And I would argue that is actually not necessary. And there are a lot of positions that would be very amenable to this. And this just gives workers rights to say, actually, I duly note that you would like me to come into the office, but I'm going to choose to work from home. That's it. Okay, Maui Meadows Community Facilities District. So this is built on the important work of the current Community Facilities District Code, which I understand has never been used because of one thing. As I understand it, it's very difficult to get the minimum number of, again, physical signatures from owners in a certain proposed community facilities district. It's actually not clear whether or not that petition requirement, petition requirement is required if a community facilities district is created by the council. So this act does two things. It clarifies you do not need a petition if the council passes it, like of their own accord. They initiate it, it's of their own accord. And B, we're going to do one in Maui Meadows, which a lot of people have been talking about. So I work closely with Kihei Community Association, and the idea is this. Plumb all the groundwater discharge systems. So maybe start with the cesspools, see how far we get, then maybe even add septic tanks, and just take the effluent to the Kihei Wastewater Reclamation Facility, which is not too far away. And then you bring back reuse water, which is now disinfected, hopefully, but has to be R1. And then we grow our first segment, irrigation reuse greenbelt firebreak. In fact, Maui Meadows is very exposed up there. And I started studying this in 2020, and the idea has just grown on me and grown on me and grown on me because you get a zero-out injection wells. And the way I see this, it's not a reuse project here or there. It's again, system level analysis. It's a military fortification. This is life-saving care. You're also zeroing out injection wells in the full expression of this, and you have to start somewhere. Maui Meadows is ground zero for two things. The biggest cluster, as I understand it, of groundwater discharge on-site disposal methods basically no treatment. It's also one of the most exposed places to fires, and it's a great size to develop out this municipal scale irrigation reuse greenbelt, which is similar to what I participated in a leading manner to develop in Matlaya, just at a municipal scale. And this is muscle memory that we need to start developing. There are a lot of people working on this. A CFD, if passed, could really kick it off. And there's a way to pay for this with philanthropy baked in there. And the idea would for it to be zero cost, maybe a low monthly payment. But the idea across all my projects that have to do with reuse and community scale or community facilities district scale is to meet the current going rate for wastewater treatment. That's like a broad specification. So yeah, that has been held up because they can't get the signatures. And so the very fine point of this is if you don't have the signature or petition requirement and the county council has the power to pass CFDs, for me, that's like, oh, we got a new organ. We got a new organ. We got a new organ. And those can be integrated. And from a systems level, you're going to have to put out the dendrites and create these community facilities districts. And in a lot of places, they're off-island residents, and the last thing they want to do is dig up their yards because they're not thinking about the system level. They're just thinking about their bills. I understand that, but that's not long-term thinking. That's not system-level thinking. And we have to get some movement on these things. The PURE Act, so simple, bans GMOs. That's it. Like, I grew up in a very industrial agricultural area. I remember the pesticide or herbicide or other asides, airplanes just going over, spraying. I mean, we're just everywhere. And that's not good. Pretty much no one here believes in that unless they're just, I don't know, having like a mirror neuron with someone getting their business harmed by this. But yeah, so much water goes into these operations. Again, Molokai, people are not happy with that stuff over there. And like the pathogens, when you're introducing new things that are like code-based, those things can replicate or spread. Of course, there's all these safeguards in place, but what I have found is a lot of these systems and ideas, there is this impression that it's all controlled and it's all very well tested, and it's just, I am so sorry. Worked at NASA. Like, people need to lower their expectations on due diligence and know that these things are profit driven. There's a lot of mysteries, and we don't want those mysteries. And yeah, this would be a disruptive change in many ways for a lot of profit-seeking organizations. However, talk about a lab leak. What about some sort of mutation? And maybe it's already happened. Not to mention that, this is kind of like the core for an industry that's propagated around the world. And it's just not the kind of Maui Mana magic that people are looking for. And can you imagine freeing up all that water down in South Maui? It's just something that a lot of people invested a lot of time in. Again, getting the physical signatures, the work that went into that GMO ban, and it just, as I understand it, was made to be unenforceable, which is similar to what's happening with the Supreme Court decision for injection wells. So ban GMOs. That's it. Two more. Okay, Hanai Cacao Act. Just take care of each other. It just says if you live here and you have established residency for over a year, so people are not taking a plane over and taking advantage of this, people who have established residencies and they find themselves unsheltered for over 24 hours and it is not voluntary and they don't really know what to do. I mean, there's so many reasons for this. The wildfire tragedy, domestic violence. I mean, the richest of the rich, if it's like a coercive controller type situation, yeah, even that type person might need this. If they are suddenly given an impossible choice between enduring something unendurable or like, not having shelter. Like, these things happen. You have generational trauma. You have race-based trauma. You have addiction that has genetic components, and it all might be driven by that original exposure to an illegal discharge, and the same people paying for the sweeps are paying for the salaries of the people who are lawyers defending against the requirements. It is about enough to make the head spin. And the idea is this: if people think that accumulating wealth is making them more attractive, but they have a certain personality trait of having all this liquidity and the capacity, if you will, to walk by people who are suffering, be able to do something about it, and choose not to, well, that's not a suitable mate. And this closes that gap in the sense that it just says, indeed, you have a right to housing in an emergency. That's it. You're a resident, gold star person on earth. We are not going to turn our back to you. And God forbid we sweep you if you're in that situation. There is like a law that I am not an expert on. It was a royal law that just says, let the people rest beside the road. And this takes it another step. Let them rest in a shelter. That these factors that lead people to being unsheltered for anyone are insurmountable given the subjective circumstances that we are exposed to. And to make some sort of judgment that, oh, he's unsheltered, bad choices. That's picking and choosing your facts, and it is not accurate in so many cases. And there's a real thing. Mensa to unsheltered pipeline. What's Mensa? Very high IQ. Why would those people be unsheltered? Well, they talk back. They question the very frameworks of workplaces that are structured around, keeping you in a cubicle for 8 hours a day and calculating how much you will give up your value over years and years and decades. And so just the whole narrative that people are unsheltered strictly because of their own choices, it's a level playing field. And if you're not successful, well, it can be traced to personal responsibility. That's very parallel to some doctrine developed largely by the Rockefellers, which is the idea that mental health arises or not in a vacuum. Because what happens if we start looking at systemic factors? Well, then we start looking at things like labor laws and standards of living and like child labor and all the things. So this just cuts that narrative off at the chase, and it institutionalizes the value and knowledge after the wildfire tragedy in which the world witnessed a mobilization that I don't know has ever been witnessed before. And I know it wasn't perfect, and I know people are still struggling with that, but there is residual institutional knowledge, and it appears the government had no problem doing modest camps, if you will, hate using that word, during COVID, because then it was about protecting the people like inside the gated community. Why is that so hard now? I know there's 1,000 answers to that. I'm just saying, if there is a requirement to house people, it's paid for with a modest licensing fee on very high profit enterprises. It really is a moral choice. It is a choice that reflects whatever narrative is shared. And I would argue that all we have to do is update our narrative, that it can happen to any of us, and that the playing field is not level. And that unlevelness may be in the very code of your DNA. It may be in generational abuse. It may be in generationally inherited addiction. It may be in so many things we can't count. And by gosh, this is basic morality, and the idea that you would be sweeping people after presiding over the greatest loss in housing inventory in history, it does not check out. It does not stand up to any basic systems level analysis. And this fixes it. It tests people. Do you want to fix it? Because if you need somebody in that scapegoat category that makes you feel good about having those liquid holdings and walking past people and not feeling anything, what happens when that person's not there? And you have no one to point to rationalize your holdings. That is actually something that people need to deal with personally, but it actually has very little to do with the people that actually suffer from this stuff. And that has recently included me. So if you would like to go feast your eyes on livingmaui.org/diligence, and I mean, if you can read every page that is linked on that page and write me a heartfelt email that I have not worked hard and that I am not the type of person that merits security, I will duly note that. But I just, people need to get in their vocabulary unsheltered by the federal standard, aerospace engineer, domestic genocide survivor, with a solution for every 41 injection well and a data set of every major discharge in the state. And to say that I navigated that without a bathroom, that was permitted, and that I felt very trapped for a very long time, and it was just about accessing currency. But so many factors went into that were outside of my control. Like if someone would like to make the case that that is normal and totally makes sense, well, let's talk. But for now, I know there are all sorts of other extraordinary people, and I've witnessed them firsthand. Share your mana. They helped me develop the Hanai Cacao Act. And what I realize, and I saw and I recognize in others, is it actually takes quite an evolution of spirit to navigate these challenges. And it's never easy. And you basically have to become a Zen master just to get through it. And then to layer on this blame narrative, I mean, there is an element of choices to it. But I'll stop there. It's basic ethics. If you see your fellow human suffering, you don't say, ha ha ha, I didn't do that. And then you're like, oh yeah, generational wealth, race, gender identity, blah, blah, blah. So I'll leave it at that. We have one more. Okay, the YY Act. So I published this on the day of the first Kona Low. And it does two things. I got this from someone who I am just actually a big fan of. And it's based after the idea of a lot of social democrats, which is basically this: moderate taxation of those who have much and much. And it's applied to something that the county has the ability to tax: real property. Ultra high value real property holdings, like 10 million or higher, up to 250 and higher. Just a moderate increase in the real property tax rates. I know very little about this. It's just the framework is there to say, hey, y'all, you really do draw upon our resources to make these bunkers and resorts and all the things. But there's not enough to go around. There's a long list of waiting lists for wells in the North Shore area, and you're talking about piping water over to Kihei where you're not meeting the requirement, and all these pathogens are going into the ocean, and it just seems like a funding gap. And it's just kind of like, pay your fair share. Build your bunker, but pay up. How good is your bunker if the external system fails? And then my voice is getting lost. Still talking to myself in this room. Hope you're enjoying it. Last one, the second half of the YY Act, and this is one of my favorite ones. So it says if you have familial or kuleana lands, and it's a watershed, it's acreage, maybe it's big, maybe it's above Kihei, Kulakai, maybe that watershed isn't managed, and maybe we have well-established methods to manage them, and maybe with some investment, your family lands can become managed, optimally managed. One of the other mayoral candidates talked about smiling landscapes. So let's say that Kuleana land is now a perfectly managed watershed. All the native and canoe plants, all the berms, and all the strategies that are there. But here's the thing. Let's say manage your lands. We will reduce or eliminate your real property taxes because a lot of these families use currency as a lubricant. There's not much coming in. There's not much going out. You just need enough to meet the bare necessities. And if you can put the plug back in when you change the oil, you don't have a leak. That leak, I'm really hitting a wall with my voice. That leak, if you don't put the plug back in, the lubricant can drain from the system, and then you do not have your forever financial machine to go with your forever landscape, because those property taxes can add up if you do not have significant income. And then, as I understand it, that can be a pathway for someone taking that land. And it just cuts it off at the path. And then if you have managed landscapes, the value that you get from that downstream is way more than the county is going to get off of antes, several thousand a year or whatever it is. So zero out property taxes on Kuleana lands that are properly managed, so that, like Uncle Walter over there, Molokai, he has it figured out. It's an integrated approach, and there are strategies in place. I'm pretty sure, given a budget and some equipment and some prepayment for some labor, that he could probably manage a much larger area than he is. In fact, that philosophy of putting the love in water, that's what the L's for. Because I swear I saw images after some of those Konas, and the water in the ocean at the bottom of Uncle Walter's watersheds was clear. It was clear. And the YY Act, it's about true material wealth around water. Managed watersheds take some incremental taxes from ultra high value earnings. Then we will work those tickets for those wells, for those water access permit requests, get everybody who wants water, the water that they want, disinfect it going into the ocean, ideally into an irrigation reuse greenbelt firebreak, and then and only then will we talk about piping water to South Maui from the North Shore. And that for me is just a basic system level analysis. I don't see it happening. My understanding is the county cannot even properly build a speed bump. So what are the probability that these people, God love them, I don't sense a bad cell in anyone's body. This is just a new way of looking at things. You kind of need somebody who is a big weirdo and obsesses over this stuff, and then the good mayor and all the other candidates. You need like 10 mayors for this place. It's a big job. And then you take, instead of like the pyramid that concentrates authority up into a single point of failure, you have your whole legislative council. You've got your legislative council already. That's the county council. You have an executive council at the top. Then you're spreading all those big decisions among 10 minds, 10 reviewers, 10 routers of ideas, so that everyone who votes for a mayor has representation, just so we don't miss any good ideas. And then indeed, you don't just have one person in the so-called electric chair if bad decisions are made. These executive decisions will be vetted. And then one person is not subject to be at a single point failure mode. Again, that is a system level analysis concept. And you have all those ideas. You have 10 candidates in the room. There are 10 elements in the MLAST Act, and you've got 9 council members. So 10 members of the executive council. It could be totally informal, just a chat group. You've got 9 members of the council, 10 elements on the MLAST Act, all the good ones: food, water, education, Kapuna, the list goes on. They're kind of all there. And then you have what is like a symmetrical leadership structure. It is a leadership structure that is designed to enable a forever machine where the leadership is not a single point failure. It is not winners and losers. Everybody has some form of a seat at the table, even if it's just your mayor having an ear in the room. And we just call a Lord of the Rings moment where we just reject the external model, the totally colonial model of winner take all, and everybody else, good luck getting a meeting. And yeah, I would never have considered running for this office if I could have got a meeting with the mayor. I could not get a meeting with them. And I basically have been on the outs since I became an unwilling whistleblower. I was hacked. I can't even imagine how much my life has changed since I uncovered all these permit violations. People were not welcoming to the information. And in some ways, it has been perfect because, again, I walked out of that clerk's office 4 minutes before it closed. I was one signature short. I hope I don't get her in trouble. I was given the advice that I could sign, and I was the 15th signature. Without any one of those signatures, I wouldn't have been on the ballot. And there has been something of a divine force to this. I feel like I'm riding a wave, kind of like there's a tsunami behind me, and a lot of people say something like this: well, maybe they'll listen to a rocket scientist. I'm like, well, we will see. And so, again, I'm here because there is no sanitation, and I'm not okay with that. And there are other things, other gaps, easy to close, but you're going to have to go for the frameworks. We're not going to get there. There is where we need to be, this forever machine where we don't really notice. I mean, we duly note if the boats stop, but it's not the end of the world. In fact, it might be the beginning of a very nice world. A world where it's like, what time is it? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, surfing, or time to go to bed. And you know what that means, babe. And like, there's just a different way to look at things where the idea of tourism is optional. The idea of having to hustle to sell places by the night is optional. And things just internally check out, which is to say, people read their mission statements and follow them. People understand their permit requirements and meet them. And basic dignities are extended to everyone. And it's not about redistribution of wealth in the abstract sense. It is about the recognition that the human brain is the most complex substance known in the universe. Like, by virtue of being able to observe and see and think and kilo and share aloha, human beings are royalty in the universe by the matter of our brain itself. And that this is not a war. What we're engaged in is an exorcism. And if I get my way, everyone will feel included. And this extends even to the STR owners, because it must hurt to have it revealed how much resentment people apparently had all along before this was an issue. Because I recognize that even the people that we perceive as enemies, down deep, everybody wants a part of the Maui magic. That is to throw on your flip-flops, disappear, and just relax and take a deep breath. But I haven't ruled out that what we're witnessing is that these terrible theys, they're going for the place that the healers come to heal. That's a serious matter because it's like this place is like a lymph node of the earth. The immune cells come here to share information, and it's like a stopping point, a natural capital. It's a place where knowledge both has hidden out and knowledge is being brought in, dare I say called. And if we can bridge those old ways with some of the supplements, we can honor the mothership. And the mothership is just the living aunties of the island. It's going to take something like a code update, but these 12 concepts, not a lawyer, but they are very well thought through. And they are presented for your consideration as a non-Hawaiian who is not from here, who absolutely adores Hawaiians. I see them as just, I mean, that extra 50 to 100 IQ points comes in handy. You got the best senses of humor on the planet, and I just don't want you to see you lose that anymore. And my closing thought is this. Does everyone remember when people used to, like, groups of people would go into uncontrollable fits of laughter and, like, have to figure out a way to get out of it? I saw some people doing that on social media, and I was like, that's like a lost skill set. Like, losing ourselves to just a good laugh. I mean, you have to get to a certain level of material security to even let that in. And so many people have lost that. I know I have, but I am not going to stop fighting. I could get one vote. I may actually place with 10 candidates. You never know. But I am the only candidate endorsed by that signed the Our Hawaii pledge. I plan to spend less than $1,000. And by gosh, if I place 69 days after filing, that will be something, because as far as I can tell, the so-called top 3 candidates are just very well funded. They seem to have a paradigm of kind of trying to make everyone happy, and I plan to take sides. And the side that I plan to take is the people who, like me, may not feel they've had a level playing field. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that and doing small incremental steps to make sure people don't fall through the cracks, and to really recognize that falling through of the cracks may be by design, and it can also be designed out. And this is just presented for your consideration. And I present it humbly at the feet of the people that I consider to be the last hope for humanity. You were so fortunate to hide out here until almost 1800. You have been very, very persistent, sustaining this knowledge that has been lost in a lot of places. And I just would like to see people enabled to realize their own value, for us to help each other develop our skill sets and help each other adapt to our failure modes instead of the opposite. Because what we have now with this cutthroat competition is everyone is going for each other's weaknesses. We're undermining or downplaying their strengths, and it is a zero-sum game. Like, this polarization needs to end. It's the #1 failure mode of any living life support system. It does not matter how good your living life support system is if the crew is at each other's throats and literally sabotaging it. And what is this whole Bill 9 stuff but just a system level sabotage of our nervous systems itself? There are much more viable solutions. You just need to update the framework. So I'm going to call it. That was a little bit of a long one. And 2 viewers. I don't know if I count as one of them. So, hi, Mom. There you have it. livingmaui.org. Let me get it right. livingmaui.org/legislation. All right. Have a wonderful day. Aloha.